9 terrorist camps were targeted and successfully destroyed. Over the last 3 decades, Pakistan has systematically built terror infrastructure. It is a complex web of recruitment and indoctrination centers, training areas for initial and refresher courses, and launch pads for handlers.
Hi, and welcome to The Wire. I'm Siddharth Varadarajan, and today we will be discussing the Indian military action against targets in Pakistan and in Pakistan occupied Kashmir, action that the government of India took early this morning uh, as a response to the terrorist attack on tourists in Pahalgam on April the 22nd. Joining me for this discussion, which I hope will shed light on what's been happening, what will happen, what could happen in the days and weeks ahead, are Sushant Singh, who is a lecturer in political science at Yale University, and of course a journalist with a former army officer and a journalist with a long track record in covering defense and security issues. He is also consulting editor of the Caravan, and I will also add a colleague of mine. We work together for the India Cable newsletter. So, Sushant, thank you very much for joining us. And our second guest today is Professor Christoher Clary, who is also a political scientist, uh, teaches at the University of Albany, and has earlier served in the Department of Defense in the US as the ex-country director for South Asia. That's a Pentagon position, and somebody who has kind of followed Pakistan and India-Pakistan relations closely, and we hope he will bring some of that perspective as a person outside the region um, for this discussion, which, as you can imagine, is very heated, charged, emotional topic. What I hope to do in the next 45 minutes or so, gentlemen, is to provide our viewers with a calm, collected assessment of what exactly happened early today with these attacks on 9 different sites in Pakistan. Uh, Form some kind of an assessment of what happened, the military aspect, the diplomatic aspect, and then, of course, focus on the road that lies ahead. What might Pakistan's response be? What would the short, medium, and long term impacts of this be? Because these are all questions that require, cool-headed, level-headed analysis. Something which, sadly, the bulk of Indian television does not provide viewers, because it's more a kind of political theater that we see on air. So that's what we hope to bring our viewers today at The Wire. And, Sushant, I want to start with you. Um, Early this morning, uh, events began in the form of a rather terse press release by the Ministry of Defense, and which spoke in rather sort of telegraphic, cryptic terms of having targeted 9 different locations. India made 2 or 3 important points in its press release. First, that these targets were linked to the terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan. Secondly, that no military target, no military infrastructure or military forces were targeted and hit. And the reason India chose to conduct its operations in this way was because it was conscious of the need to not escalate matters and to kind of keep things within the confines of manageable conflict, against the stated yardstick that the army and the MOD mentioned of targeting terrorist infrastructure, not provoking, being careful not to provoke the Pakistani military directly by targeting them, and hoping to contain any future escalation. How would you rate? It's now been nearly 12 hours, 12 to 15 hours since these attacks. How would you rate the outcome so far?
Firstly, thank you, Siddharth. Thank you for having this discussion, having me on the discussion. It's wonderful to be here with you and with Chris, whom I'm known for some time. About the operation per se, I would divide it into two parts. One is the domestic part. So essentially the military operation is targeted primarily at a political audience in India. It has a political component to it, and then of course it is a military strategic component, international relations component, which is targeted towards Pakistan. As far as the political side domestically is concerned, I think the nomenclature, the use of the spokesperson, the use of the language that has been used, and they have mastered the government in India has mastered this technique over many years, refined it by using the television channels and social media handles and newspapers, as you just spoke about. As far as the strategic aspect of these operations are concerned, the fundamental fact is, what is the aim of these operations? Is the aim of the operation to create deterrence so that the next such strike does not happen, the next such terror attack does not happen, which comes out of Pakistan or out of Pakistan-based, Pakistan-backed militants, whether in Kashmir or elsewhere? If that is the aim, then these strikes definitely would fall short. But if the aim is to demonstrate that India has done something big, has punished Pakistan, has avenged the terror the terrorist the terror attack or the terrorist or the killings by terrorists in Pahalgam, then it is perfectly fine. It has probably achieved its aim because it targeted many places, including in Punjab, including Murid ke near Lahore, which is clearly much more than what has ever been attempted or ever been tried. In most circumstances, going into Pakistani Punjab, going close to Lahore, would be seen as crossing a red line, a violation of sovereignty. So strategically, in the larger gamut of things, does it allow you to deter Pakistan from future action? No. Does it achieve the aim of showing demonstrable success to the Indian population and create this narrative of rather jingoistic narrative about what you have done? Yes. At the military level, are these operations successful in terms of have they hit their target? How many losses has India had? How many losses has Pakistan had? Are there major collateral losses? So to me, it seems collateral damage has been very limited. About losses suffered by India, there's been a lot of buzz and rumors about the number of aircraft, fighter jets India has lost in this operation, but we really don't know what those numbers are. And I would want to hear from you and from Chris. What do you make of those reports by Reuters and AP and the report by the Hindu, which was taken down? So at the military level, at a very smaller professional level, I think the mission are, I would say, 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10, depending on how many aircraft India has lost in the bargain. If no aircraft is lost, then it is 9.5 on 10. But if a few aircraft are lost, then it is not as successful a mission as it would seem on the outset. So politically successful, strategically very limited, militarily depends on how much the Indian losses are. This is how I would characterize this mission.
Before I come to you, Chris, to get your assessment and in particular your sense of how Pakistan is going to read what exactly has happened today, and Pakistan is likely to react. So, Sushant, I wanted to throw one more sort of question or observation at you. It's tempting to compare the 9 attacks today with what happened at Balakot. The Balakot attack in 2019 followed closely on the heels of the Pahalgam attack on CRPF, a CRPF convoy that
Pulwama.
The Pulwama, the attack that killed, more than 40 Jawan enlisted men, and again there was a lot of anger in the country, which the Bharatiya Janata Party and Mr. Modi wanted to satiate in some way, perhaps even ride that tiger, and so you had Balakot. Balakot, the government made many claims about what was accomplished. But it did not provide any additional information or evidence, and in fact, questions or requests for evidence of the damage caused and terrorists killed and so on was met with almost kind of official anger. That who are you to question what the government says? Who are you to question what the army says or the Air Force says? Where is the question of evidence? You have to trust us and so on. And the Pakistanis, of course, said that nothing of any consequence was hit. Compared to Balakot, this time, the Pakistanis themselves have admitted to losses. I think the figure mentioned by the DG ISPR, who's the top military spokesman, is 28 killed and or 26 killed. I'm sorry, 26 killed and 30, 40 people injured. And we have the statement by the Jamaat, the Jaish-e-Mohammed chief, Masood Azhar, who kind of admits that 10 members of his family and 4 associates, close associates, were killed in the Indian attack. So 14 out of 26 of those killed appear to be people linked in some way to Jaish-e-Mohammed and Masood Azhar. I'm not going into the morality, legality of women and children who are related to a terrorist getting killed and so on. That's a separate issue. But certainly the Pakistanis and terrorists like Masood Azhar are more forthcoming about what the strike accomplished in concrete terms. So would you say then that compared to Balakot's deterrent effect, such as it was, clearly didn't last more than 5 years because or 6 years? That's as long as it took for the Lashkar-e-Taiba, or the so-called resistance front, to mount this awful attack at Pahalgam. Do you think, given the kind of effect that these strikes have had, particularly Bahawalpur, that the deterrent effect may be slightly longer lasting? And a reason I put this to you is because I've been following a lot of sort of analysts who are very thrilled with what's happened today. And their response to the kind of argument that you have made that, there's no long-term deterrence is I've heard former officials from RAW, for example, say that we have to keep working on deterring Pakistan. So one attack is not going to deter. They're talking in terms of continuous deterrence. So do you think from that logic, there is something to commend what has happened today from a military strategic point of view?
So compared to 2019, Siddharth, this is definitely a military success. 2019 Balakot, as I wrote in the Caravan cover story for March, was a definite military failure, although it was a big political success for Mr. Modi. Not only that India did not hit the targets at Balakot, and that's the reason no evidence was provided. It also lost a MiG-21. A pilot was taken captive by Pakistan. It shot down its own helicopter. It actually came out second best in terms of the military engagement in 2019. Compared to that, this is definitely a much better military operation, much more successful military operation. And as I said, if India has not lost any fighter jets, then it is a 9.5 on 10 in terms of the military. Okay. But as far as deterrence is concerned, deterrence cannot be constructed by targeting only Jaish-e-Mohammed or Lashkar-e-Taiba. At the end of the day, we must realize that the Jaish-e-Mohammed or Lashkar-e-Taiba or any other militant group operating out of Pakistan, any other jihadi group operating out of Pakistan, is essentially acting at the behest of the Pakistani army, the ISI, or the security infrastructure, the security intelligence establishment that operates within Pakistan. Unless that establishment is targeted, unless that the Pakistan army, the ISI, that those people are targeted, people at the top of the hierarchy, that deterrence would not be established. As you saw, Mr. Modi, when the killings happened, he said that we would go and hit the hands behind these killers. We would go and target the enablers of these killers. So the enablers of those people who carried out the horrendous killings in Pahalgam are just not the JEM and LET and their family members. It is essentially the Pakistanis, a certain component of the Pakistani state, including a section of the Pakistani army and the ISI, which has promoted them. So if you are talking about constructing and building that kind of deterrence, you would probably have to go and hit at Pakistan army and not say that we don't want to hit military targets, and we have not hit any military targets, and all that we have done is non-escalatory in nature. That doesn't seem to meet the yardstick of what you want to achieve in the long run.
Understood. Chris, if I can pull you in at this point now, you've heard Sushant's assessment from an Indian point of view of what may have been accomplished with these attacks. We've compared it to Balakot. But given your insights into Pakistan, the Pakistani military, the Pakistani establishment, what is your sense of how Pakistan is reacting to what India has done? We've seen, in the build-up to what happened this morning, there was anxiety about a week or 10 days ago in the immediate aftermath of Pahalgam. And then there was sort of, at the civil society level, people were making jokes about the danger of war and mocking sort of what they said were warmongering elements in India. And then the establishment itself kind of, I got the sense that they got lulled into a belief that maybe an attack is going to come, but it won't be imminent. And then you have this attack, and it's an attack that goes beyond the post-Uri surgical strikes, which were just across the line of control. It goes beyond what was done at Balakot, because even though that was deep inside Pakistan, it was the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. This time you have targets, significant targets in Punjab. One in Muridke, right next to Lahore, and Bahawalpur, which is pretty deep. It's a sort of heartland area. So how do you assess the net effect of what India has done? And of course, then we will come to the question that Sushant posed, which is something we don't know about exactly, of whether planes were shot or not shot, etc. We can discuss that. But just in terms of the first order reaction in Pakistan to what has happened, and how you think they are likely to move ahead now.
Sure. Thanks for having me, though I think the circumstances could be better, because I still think we have another dangerous period ahead. Pakistan is contemplating how they will retaliate to last night's strikes. I believe there will be additional retaliations. I don't think they'll be satisfied with the potential downing of Indian aircraft in the immediate aftermath of the strikes, nor do I think they'll be satisfied with the firing along the line of control, which has become quite intense in some sectors. Sushant and I are in agreement. I think the best available evidence that we have as open source researchers relying on journalists and commercial satellite imagery is the 2019 strike missed. It got very close to the Jaish-e-Mohammed compound, but it hit the trees and did not appear to hit the structure. We don't know that for sure. The access to the site was limited in 2019. But I actually think the images that we are seeing now indicate how good social media is at ventilating clips and images in the event of a successful strike. So I think for those analysts that said the 2019 strikes were right on the money and that India had achieved all of its goals in 2019, I think they should maybe reflect about what a strike that actually does hit a target, with the sort of signatures that generates, and we're all witnessing those now on social media. So you hit a number of targets. I don't think we have a full sense of the casualties at all of them. I should note that the Pakistani state had ordered a lot of these facilities that might have been targeted, madrasas and other things. They ordered them to send students home to try to reduce the number of personnel that would be at the sites. I think that's consistent with the casualty numbers the Pakistani state is saying. I think striking in the middle of the night is another way to reduce the number of people at these compounds. I think that was a choice India made to avoid a lot of body bags on the TV. We will see those. So we've seen some already in the images, and we of course have the pretty quick funeral process that occurs in a Muslim state. So I anticipate that Pakistan will probably retaliate quickly. The National Security Council of Pakistan issued a statement in a very common South Asian tradition that they reserve the right to retaliate at a time and place and a manner of their choosing. But I suspect the Pakistan military will want to get this crisis over with if they're able to do so. And so now the question is what comes next? I think on the Indian side, at least, we've now demonstrated that India has enough weapons, enough types of weapons, that it can deliver high explosive onto a target in a way that's very difficult for defenses to defeat, because it doesn't require Indian aircraft ever to cross over into Pakistani airspace. So the window of vulnerability for those aircraft is limited, and the vulnerability may entirely be on the Indian side of the border or the line of control. We'll have a better sense of the vulnerability of those aircraft in the hours and days ahead once we figure out whether 1, 2, or more aircraft were downed, or conceivably no Indian aircraft. I think the early reports seem to indicate at least 1, if not more. But we are all operating in a haze, and from what I can tell, that haze is somewhat being encouraged by the Indian state that's trying to complicate the ability of Pakistan to do battle damage assessment on those air-to-air engagements. So now what we're going to see is whether Pakistan similarly has standoff weapons that are able to accurately reach Indian targets without exposing Pakistani aircraft to danger. We know they have those things in the inventory, but some of them are Turkish and other types of munitions that have not been used widely. And then Pakistan also has a choice about what sort of targets to hit. My suspicion is because there's not the BLA, the Baloch Liberation Army, and the TTP, the Pakistan Taliban, they don't have training camps in India for Pakistan to reach out and try to hit. So I suspect that Pakistan will likely go against Indian military targets. I think that's a way to try to reduce, perhaps down to 0, the number of Indian civilians that are killed in the next round, if there is indeed a next round, as I anticipate. And ideally, India can absorb that and we can move on. If the retaliation is very successful, of course, it'll be hard for India to just stop with 1 round each.
There is a school of thought that we, me and my colleagues encountered today when we were speaking. I think Zahid Hussain, one of the editors at Dawn, gave an interview to Karan Thapar, my colleague. And Zahid was suggesting that, taking the Pakistani claim of having downed 5 Indian fighter aircraft at face value, he took the view that Pakistan has already retaliated. And I saw a quote or a bite of the Pakistani defense minister in an interview to Bloomsburg, where he seemed to be speaking in a similar sort of way, that as long as India doesn't escalate further, we have done what we wanted to do by way of retaliation, and there's no need for us to do anything further. And the statement coming out of the NSC, however, makes it clear that even if Indian aircraft have been downed, as Pakistan claims, they reserve the right to attack targets in India. This seems to be what the NSC appears to have decided, and certainly the stage is set, in my view, and I think that's the way any rational person in India will react, that the Pakistani military will be looking to go after some sort of target on the Indian side in the next few days. Now, isn't it at one level? Let's assume for a second that Pakistan is fairly confident of its claim that it's downed Indian aircraft, and a lot of this operates at the realm of what you can convince your public about, right? So we still don't know the absolute truth of what happened in Balakot, but the government of India was able to sell a line to its people. The government of Pakistan was able to sell a line to its people, and those claims that each side made, in a funny sort of way, provided a kind of off-ramp, an easy off-ramp for India and Pakistan to walk away from a potentially destabilizing conflict with relative ease. Here I see the Pakistani claim of having shot planes down, a claim that India will never accept, even if it were to be true. But as I said, there's no concrete information in any case. I saw this claim as, again, a possibility of both sides again walking away. Quite, Pakistan saying, look, we've had our retaliation, and India says, look, Pakistan doesn't have the stomach for a fight, and so we have prevailed. And both sides could sort of could sell that line to the public. But it seems that the dynamics in Pakistan, maybe because of the fractured nature of its polity, with Imran Khan sitting in jail begging for blood, and the very tense and dodgy relationship between the army chief and the so-called civilian government, it does seem as if the possibility of an easy off-ramp is not something that GHQ, Rawalpindi, is looking at.
I would be happy if you're right. I've been doing this for a while now, and I've been peppering my Pakistani colleagues for decades now into these hypotheticals. What if there's a bombing? What if the Indian Air Force comes in? What can happen that would make it easier for you not to retaliate and keep the escalatory spiral in play? And it is the case that I remember quite distinctly an old, very senior retired Pakistani officer telling me, the more Indian aircraft we take down, the easier it is for us to avoid responding. The challenge is twofold here. One is Pakistan has a stated doctrine of quid pro quo plus. Now, you don't want to be tied into your doctrine, but that doctrine doesn't suggest that you can shoot down some aircraft and call it a day when they're bombing Meridike and Balakot. So I would think it would be an expansive interpretation of that doctrine that downing Indian aircraft and firing along the line of control would be adequate. I think especially in the context of the political and economic levers that India pulled in the immediate aftermath of the crisis. The Indus Waters Treaty cutoff is a big deal. The Pakistanis feel that very emotively, and cutting off the lifeline of Pakistani rivers reminds many Pakistanis of an ingrained belief they have that India is not reconciled to Pakistan's existence. And so if India is not reconciled to Pakistan's existence, it's going to have to fight for it, right? So if not, you're giving permission to India to do this whenever it feels aggrieved, right? You're giving them a blank slip that says, hey, if there's another terrorist attack, you just come on in here, you mow the grass. It's not our problem anymore. So I don't think that's how the Pakistani military is wired. And secondly, and relatedly, I don't think that's how General Munir is wired. Everyone that meets him suggests he doesn't have the personality to just, turn the other cheek in a situation like this. And, I would underscore, when I talk to Pakistanis, they believe that General Bajwa bent over backwards to try to improve relations with India. Yeah. And they say, what did he get for it? You have a ceasefire that makes India's life easier. And you got nothing. You didn't get a political process. You didn't get a dialogue. In India, in their minds, it's difficult to know how sincere they are, but certainly in their statements, publicly and privately, they say India just keeps on turning up the temperature here with the Baloch. They keep on turning up the temperature with the TTP. They keep on turning up the temperature with targeted killing. So it's difficult, in that context for military men who have enormous sway, as you indicate, within Pakistani deliberations, to say, well, we'll just call this a day. We had a pretty good night with air defense, and the crisis is over. With that said, Pakistan has real struggles. Its economy is in a mess. It's got these insurgency. I don't think it wants to be bogged down in a long slugfest with India. So I anticipate they're going to try to find targets that allow them to preserve national honor and preserve some, semblance of deterrence while returning back to being able to focus resources, time, and capabilities on these other very serious challenges that Pakistan has to face.
Right. Now turning to the sort of the $50 million question of these fighter aircraft that Pakistan claims to have downed. I've been up since early morning, since the news broke, and of course, as you mentioned, social media becomes a primary source of a lot of information. As soon as word emerged that Bahawalpur had been hit, one looked for handles from Bahawalpur in order to access footage of possible damage and so on and so forth. And of course, social media can also be a source of enormous disinformation, and we saw literally within the first hour, actually, claims being put out of Indian aircraft being shot. And I think the reason why so many people perhaps are still skeptical of Pakistan's claim is that the initial tweets and so on that emerged on social media used sort of pretty crappy old stock photos of a MiG-21 crash and a Bulgarian photograph, and things that had nothing to do with an India-Pakistan skirmish, and this got pretty quickly exposed, and then you had sort of Pakistan's official media, PTV, making statements and then retracting them, talking of several Indian soldiers having been captured, when it was very clear that there was no ground operation this time, and India didn't even cross the IB or the LC. But starting around 2:30 or 3 in the morning, when news began to emerge of aircraft crashing at initially it was 2 locations in Pampore, north of Srinagar, and then in Akhnur, in the Jammu region, and footage emerged from the Indian side, taken by Indian villagers of this clearly some sort of aircraft wreckage. And initial speculation, the Pakistanis immediately said, well, this is they would identify bits and pieces of the debris and say this is clearly an Indian aircraft and so on. And then you had Indian analysts who were saying, look, this is a JF-17 the Indian Air Force was shot down. And we now know, 10, 12 hours later, that the Indian side did not cross into Pakistan. Indian aircraft did not cross into Pakistan. The Indians have said so. The Pakistanis have also said so. The Pakistanis have said that our aircraft did not cross over into India. And I have not seen any statement by the Indian side. And they've been pretty sparse. Today's press conference, the Foreign Secretary begged the indulgence of journalists in not asking questions. He said this is still ongoing operations and we can't handle questions right now. Maybe that's a fair point. But the Indians have not said very much, but they have not said or made the allegation that Pakistani aircraft crossed over to the Indian side and that there was a dogfight. Compared to, say, Balakot, when the government of India was quite prompt in acknowledging that enemy aircraft came into the country, there was a dogfight, they were chased out, and so on and so forth. This time, there's been no public messaging of that kind at all. And this leaves us with the kind of conundrum that if indeed the debris that people have seen at Pampore, at Akhnur, and we now know in Bathinda and possibly also in Ramban, 4 locations on the Indian side, if this debris is indeed of fighter aircraft, then and everybody is now reporting unidentified aircraft. This does sort of beg the question: what is this aircraft? What aircraft are these? How did it come to fall out of the skies? And when you correlate that with the Pakistani claim of having shot down 4 or 5 aircraft, and then the Indian silence on this, India is not refuting or denying the Pakistani claim. This has opened up a whole bunch of questions in people's minds. So, Sushant, do you think there will be any light or clarity on these questions, or do you think this is one of those issues that's simply never going to get addressed and cleared up?
Yeah, Siddharth, my sense is that we should not expect much from the Indian government on this. This was their strategy even in 2019 with the blue-on-blue helicopter shooting, etc. Even if we were to get some statements at a later stage, they would be rather sparse. The Indian MiG-21, which went down in POK, in which Abhinandan was captured in 2019, went down in Pakistan, and the Pakistanis were claiming it. There were video footage, etc. If as many people claim the wreckage that we are finding in various parts of in various places in India are of Indian aircraft, then the government of India doesn't have to acknowledge it. In fact, if you saw today's briefing, which you referred to, there was no mention of the aircraft or an aerial dogfight or something happening in the air at all. It was essentially only limited to these were the targets, these were hit, this was the name of the mission, this is what these are what these targets were about. So the narrative is pretty clear. Just stay fixated to that we have hit those targets. That's it. That's where the story gets over. I don't expect much clarity from India anytime soon, or maybe even never. We are unlikely to hear the government of India come out, because by the time the briefing was held, DGISPR from Pakistani side had been making these outrageous claims. And that was a great opportunity for India to say that we have lost no soldiers, we have lost no aircraft, we have lost nothing whatsoever. This is what they had done in 2016 after the so-called surgical strikes, the trans line of control operation by special forces. And I believe even in 2019, when they claimed the Balakot strikes, that nothing was lost. That's a standard procedure for most militaries to claim if there have been no losses. Not making that claim, raises these questions, as you said, and these questions till the time we are going live on this recording remain unanswered. And it's very hard to say whether any Indian aircraft has been lost, and if an Indian aircraft has been lost, how many of them have been lost, and in what circumstances. Were they crashes? Were they shot down? Or were they something else? We really don't know anything. It's very hard to say anything for sure at this point in time.
Right. And Chris, there's bound to be a global curiosity about Pakistan's claims, because what Pakistan is essentially suggesting is a combination of F-16s and JF-17s taking on a very advanced complement of Russian and French aircraft. Is this something which the international community would have ways of finding out, or is it an issue that they will be really quite indifferent to, and will allow it to simply get buried under the carpet? This claim of
I think we're already seeing the curiosity. It's your colleagues in the Indian media are doing difficult work, but it is notable this morning that the outlets more willing to go on the record with claims of downed Indian aircraft are Reuters and the AP and other international journalists that are reporting in many cases from Indian soil. And I'm thankful that the Indian state gives them the ability to do that. I think we'll get some granularity on what happened, just like we came of the fratricidal loss of a Indian helicopter in the 2019 crisis. So you can keep these things under the rug for a bit, but after a while, there's enough oversight and journalistic scrutiny in India that I think we'll have some sense if aircraft are lost. After all, these aircraft are quite expensive. But it may take a few days for that to occur. The outside world will be interested. If those aircraft were lost, they're brought down by something. And it is more likely than not that those systems were Chinese in origin.
Yes.
Pakistan Air Force and the Pakistan military's public relations ring went out of their way to talk about certain systems, both ground-based surface-to-air missile systems, as well as long-range air missiles that are capable of striking Indian aircraft from very far away, in some cases, 100 kilometers, conceivably. That may have occurred here. And if that's the case, then those may be the first time those weapons have ever been used in anger. And for the U.S. community, it would be quite interested in the capabilities of those systems to bring down conceivably advanced French fighter aircraft that came off the line not that many months ago.
Yeah, I should add, both for your benefit and for our viewers, that there is, when it comes to the Indian media's reporting of this issue, a legal question, a legal matter that's relatively new, which is a sort of directive, I suppose a bit akin to the D notice that the British government employs against its media. But there was a directive from the Information and Broadcasting Ministry that there should be no reporting of ongoing military operations attributable to unidentified sources, and to publish only that information which comes from identified and presumably authorized sources. And I think that's the reason why the Hindu, which ran a story, eventually deleted it. That's what they've said. And I think that until the government comes on the record, either way, to say nothing happened or to say something did happen, it's going to be a little bit hard, I think, for the media to fully get involved in this. But Chris, I wanted to ask you another question. The global reaction that we've seen statements by President Trump and Marco Rubio, who echoed his boss. We've seen statements by the Russians, by the Chinese, by the Japanese, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, and there's been, of course, no condemnation of what India has done. Maybe I'm forgetting. Maybe one or two places may have done that, but as far as the big powers are concerned, they have focused on the need for restraint. And President Trump said what happened is a shame, and He then spoke of decades and even centuries of conflict. But then he added that he hoped this matter would be resolved quickly. What's your sense of the amount of political capital that the Trump administration may be willing to expend? First of all, does it even have that political capital? And if it does, will President Trump want to expend it in ensuring that whatever reaction Pakistan has to what India did stays within certain confines, and once it happens, that India then doesn't use that to escalate further? What's your sense of how US will play this?
The US does have some influence, probably asymmetrically, oddly enough, against Pakistan, because Pakistan is more dependent on IMF bailouts and other lines of kind of international credit to keep its economy afloat. My sense from Trump's remarks, from Rubio's statements, from statements from the State Department spokesperson, is that there is a desire for this to go away, that this is not viewed in emotionally laden language in the US. Even Trump's remarks about it being a shame are that it's just sort of kind of something outside of his control, something that he wishes would not occur. He doesn't appear to have any strong antagonism toward the people of India or the people of Pakistan in his commentary on this. He's said for years now that he has good relations with both countries. So it doesn't strike me that he's going to weigh in very heavily at one way or the other. Even countries like Israel, that the US feels more closely to, we've saw in Trump's statements about operations against the Houthis in Yemen that he's kind of willing to let countries take care of their own business so long as it isn't too disruptive to US interest. So I anticipate there are pressures on Pakistan today to make some prudent choices to try to get this crisis over, and soon. And I imagine there are encouraging statements to New Delhi to continue, showing restraint going forward. But the US doesn't want to derail its relationship with India carrying Pakistan's water, but it doesn't want a real war in South Asia either. That would be quite injurious to US interests. So it's trying to thread that needle here.
Yeah. Sushant, if Chris is correct, and I suspect he is, and I think you probably concur with him, that the Pakistani NSC statement today is a clear indication that Pakistan does intend to respond beyond its claims of having downed Indian aircraft. How easy or difficult will it be for, and of course a lot depends on what target they choose and what kind of damage they cause, but did you get the sense that I got in listening to the press conference, the statement by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, and also Prime Minister Modi's reluctance or unwillingness today to publicly tom-tom what has happened? Like normally he is a person who lets these kinds of actions play out in the political arena, right, for obvious electoral benefit. Today was a great moment for him to grandstand. In fact, he had a public address of sorts, but it was about satellite launches and so on. The sense I got from that and from Vikram Misri's handling was that, and the initial statement of the army and the MOD was that we really don't intend for this to escalate any further. So is there then a scenario you can envisage of a certain limited amount of damage that the Indian armed forces will take on the chin and then say, okay, fine, we now get back to business as usual? Or do you think there would be, because you foregrounded the political aspect of this action, do you think there would be uncontrollable political dynamics that might push us towards that next rung in the escalatory ladder?
No, Siddharth, that's $1 million question. I wish I knew the answer to what the Pakistani response will be. No, to add to what Chris said, and I completely agree with Chris, with Asim Munir being there, and with the pressure from the core commanders that we have heard about, he would have to undertake some form of counter strike to the Indian strikes. I would be very interested in what the geography of Pakistani counter strikes will be. If the geography is contained within Jammu and Kashmir, then I think there's a ramp off which is easily available, because Jammu and Kashmir, in a sense, with artillery firing going on the line of control, and other kinetic engagements that are taking place there, it is very easily to write it off. And of course, it depends on the nature of the targets that the Pakistan Army chooses. Unlike Chris, I am very if Indian military targets are chosen, because if an Indian military target is chosen and let's say 15 or 20 or 30 Indian soldiers in a hypothetical situation are killed, then all bets are off. Then the Indian government would be compelled to respond in a very aggressive manner. If, as they did in 2019, they hit open grassy patches of land and say, we could have hit your brigade headquarters or your logistic dumps, but we chose not to hit them, then they can claim victory in Pakistan, and India can say Pakistan missed its target, so it is 1-1. But let's not forget that in 2019 there was this ace of the Indian pilot being with Pakistan, which Pakistan promised to release very, very promptly. And besides that, you had General Bajwa, who was very keen on establishing friendly ties with India, the back channels that India and Pakistan had at that time. So there were a lot of ways in which engagement was happening and ramp offs were available. In this case, both sides will have to be very lucky, and both sides will have to win over their domestic audience rather quickly before a ramp off is available. If any of the things don't play out as per plan, then things could easily get out of hand, and that remains my big fear in that sense.
Yeah, there's a question I wanted to put to you again, Sushant, based on your initial comments about the need to deter not just the foot soldiers, the terrorist groups, their leaders, and so on, by targeting places like Muridke or Bahawalpur or some of these camps, but actually their patrons, right? And so the question of how you deal with, what kind of an incentive or what kind of a policy can you have towards the Pakistani military that would make them feel deterred. But before I come to you on that, I know that Chris had mentioned something about a hard stop. We don't have too much more time with him. So I wanted to ask you, Chris, that clearly we will, I think we're all kind of fairly, we can think of scenarios where, dire though the situation seems today, right? What kind of reaction will Pakistan come up with? How will India feel compelled to react? We can think of a scenario where, a week from now, this is likely to be behind us. And were that to be so, and I'm hoping that will indeed be so, the question that India raised today in the press conference and has been talking about, that we have all this information and evidence, we know, and the whole world knows, that Pakistan has been maintaining this permissive environment towards extremists of all kinds. What kind of a credible, if military or kinetic means is not the answer, targeting the Lashkar-e-Taiba headquarters is not the answer, what combination of methods can India, working with the international community, working with sensible stakeholders in Pakistan, come up with that could put an end to this compact that the Pakistani establishment seems to have with an endless number of bad guys and bad groups?
Yeah, it is. It's really tragic every time an Indian civilian is killed in this terrorism. And, it's understandable that my Indian friends, that the Indian people are upset by the images they witnessed a little bit more than 2 weeks ago. These tourists trying to have a nice day, sometimes on without the trip of their life, their honeymoon, and being struck down. And so I can understand a democratic state refusing to live in that world. The problem is the tools of statecraft are sometimes inadequate for the problems of statecraft. And, look at Israel today. Israel has incredible conventional dominance over its neighbors, incredible intelligence penetration of its enemies. It has killed tens of thousands of them in the last few years. But the Israeli military cannot figure out a way out of this quagmire. It is deployed. It is wrecking Israeli society. So there is a danger here that even when there is incredible military and technological asymmetry, that militaries are of limited utility to fix some of these problems. I think there needs to be a thorough investigation of what happened after the 2021 ceasefire in Kashmir. The Pakistanis thought that ceasefire is going to set the stage for a political process, and it didn't happen. Now, maybe it didn't happen because India had very good evidence that Pakistan was continuing this multi-decade dalliance with terrorist and militant groups. I don't know. I don't think it's ever been explained why the ceasefire did not provide a foundation for something more. But it is my belief that eventually India cannot achieve security against a nuclear armed rival without some sort of political process. And, I think the events of the last 2.5 weeks have sadly taken us away from a political process rather than closer to one.
Yeah. In fact, if you look at events of the last, I would say 2 or 3 years, or maybe even 5 years, like if you go back to 2019, I mean, India essentially, because, there's two aspects to this political process, right? One is the internal track of managing the legitimate aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And especially now when we say that we have fully integrated J&K into the Union of India, although I believe they were always integrated. But Mr. Modi's big point in 2019 was that we have finally integrated you. The Constitution finally applies. And yet we see that many of the rights that the Constitution promises citizens of India clearly don't apply to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And something so basic in a federal polity of a people being able to run their own affairs via a state, and India's federal structure, the Union of India, that's the formal name of the country, is built around this idea that you're going to have strong states which have their own prerogatives. And statehood was snatched away from the people of Jammu and Kashmir in 2019. Promises were made of its restoration. Those promises have not been fulfilled, and I suspect will not be fulfilled for a very long time to come, citing these kinds of problems. And of course, on the Pakistan front, there is no relationship of any kind. In fact, it was funny to see how, in the wake of Pahalgam, the government of India trying to find ways to lower the level of the relationship even further. I thought we'd already hit rock bottom. Hardly anybody was crossing the Wagah border, but now we're saying no one can cross. So the 5 people who crossed every day are not going to be able to cross. In a way, we've chucked away the prospect of the kind of political process that you speak of, and we find ourselves in a situation, or we are likely to find ourselves in a situation, where this excessive reliance on the military option as the way to deter and to force Pakistan to deliver what India wants is likely to prove ineffective as well. And somewhere down the line, we're going to keep circling back and ending up in this loop. And at some stage, this idea that you can contain things within a certain escalatory spiral, that idea may not hold good. And I think what you have pointed to, the fact that even when you have asymmetric military force between a country and its rivals, military doesn't provide you political solutions, and that holds even more in the case where you have conventional symmetry to a large extent, and of course nuclear weapons in the hands of both countries. But Chris, you've been great. Thank you so much. I've kept you longer than I said I would, and we will definitely get you back under happier circumstances. I hope that this current crisis will.
It's been a rich conversation, and I look forward to seeing the remainder of what Sushant has to say, and we'll all learn a lot more about this crisis in the hours and days ahead. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Chris. And Sushant, don't go away, because I wanted to, in the 10 minutes that we have left, 10, 15 minutes that we have left, I wanted to kind of tease you out on this this notion of deterring the Pakistani state, military, or incentivizing or having a political process, to use Christoher Clary's sort of formulation. If you look at the last 15 years, we had a major terrorist attack in Bombay, the 26/11 attack, November 2008. And it's interesting that in today's presentation by Vikram Misri, the Foreign Secretary, they actually showed a video of attacks going all the way back to the attack on Parliament in 2001, then Bombay and so on, suggesting that finally India is now answering. But of course, India did attempt a pretty credible response after 26/11, when the Manmohan Singh government chose to accumulate intelligence and create these dossiers in order to build global public opinion and present Pakistan with the case that it simply couldn't refute and couldn't not take action on. So Pakistan felt itself kind of boxed into a corner, and you had the FIA launching its own investigation under Tariq Khosa, coming up with some information that perhaps even India didn't have about the perpetrators of 26/11. And things seemed to be moving in a certain direction, but then they came unstuck. And India, to say that the perpetrators of 26/11 were punished is, that's simply not the case. And even something, Hafiz Saeed, all of these guys, the Pakistanis put them under house arrest, attempted to file cases against them, but nothing eventually came of that. So when we say that the Balakot type or this 9-target attack type of thing may not necessarily deliver the goods for India, we also have to reckon with the fact that this long drawn-out, patient process that India attempted to pursue under Manmohan, I would say even earlier, under Vajpayee, and then under Manmohan. And I dare say in the first couple of years of the Modi regime, there was some sense of the need to engage and so on. But that entire process, clearly the Indian establishment feels never delivered what India wanted. Right? So you're in the situation where the political process, such as it was, never really delivered what you wanted. The military process, as you say, and I think I agree with you, is not going to give you the satisfaction you need. What then are India's options?
Siddharth, in any case, the problem is not with India. Let's be pretty clear. The problem is with Pakistan. It is that the Pakistani side, they have not taken credible actions, as you said, whether after 2001 or after 2008, to incentivize, more peaceful, more rational, more diplomatic political engagement kind of behavior from New Delhi. If they had rewarded that kind of behavior, what India was doing, the steps that India was taking at that point in time, then this kind of very risky stuff that we see, whether in Balakot or now, would not have to take place. In an ideal scenario, what you would want as a country, as part of statecraft, is a panoply of options. You would want diplomatic options, you would want economic options, you would want military options, you would want informational options, you would want to have both carrot and sticks at the same time. You would want to incentivize Pakistan if it was doing something right. You would want to punish Pakistan if it was doing something wrong, and do it in various domains. That is ideally how statecraft works. But what my worry is that the Indian government under Mr. Modi has boxed itself over a period of time into choosing only one option, and only one option of military strikes against certain targets. So, if it was Balakot, now it is 9. Let's say a couple of years down the line, there's another terror attack, spectacular terror attack. What then? 20 strikes, 21 strikes, 25 strikes? Where does it eventually end up? You are walking on an escalatory path, even within terms of your response, by boxing yourself in. A mix of both carrot and stick and engagement in various domains or actions in various domains is what ideally statecraft would look, even though it may be extremely unpopular, with the foot soldiers of the Hindutva regime and some of the ideologues. But you would want to generate options. You would want to have options which you can say at that point in time when the next crisis occurs that I am pulling this off. Now that you have abrogated the Indus Water Treaty or kept it in abeyance, what do you do next time? There is no Indus Water Treaty left next time to be acted upon. So you are virtually constraining yourself, limiting yourself into an option where much greater escalation between two nuclear weapon states almost becomes, the probability of it increases manyfold than what it was in Balakot or what it is today.
So we need a richer set of options, statecraft, not to be reduced to a unidimensional sort of pursuit. And I suppose what you're also saying, Sushant Singh, is that this kind of toxic relationship between the pursuit of a domestic political agenda and attempting to deal with a problem like Pakistan, your relationship with Pakistan, this toxicity, also kind of ties India's hands in ways that are not very helpful. So I think we'll have to leave it there, Sushant. Thank you very much for your insightful comments. Christoher Clary has left us, but he was great too. And I do hope in the next days and weeks, as we get more information, and even in case there is some kind of a Pakistan response, that we will be able to sit again and have this kind of a calm discussion. I do hope, if you've been watching this show, that you were enlightened in some way. You heard analysis and views that made you pause and think, because that's the purpose of the work that we do at The Wire, to shine a light on what's happening, to get people to think and to analyze, and to not simply respond to events in a knee-jerk or an emotional fashion. If you've been watching, thank you very much, and do stay tuned to The Wire for more programming on what happened today and the ensuing the consequences of this. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
9 terrorist camps were targeted and successfully destroyed. Over the last 3 decades, Pakistan has systematically built terror infrastructure. It is a complex web of recruitment and indoctrination centers, training areas for initial and refresher courses, and launch pads for handlers.